This podcast is sponsored by CSMi, the maker of the Humac Norm Isokinetic system. Purchase a new or refurbished machine, or you can even upgrade an existing system to bring it up to date with all the latest testing and training applications. Please visit csmisolutions.com to view all of their available products, including the Humac Norm Isokinetic system, the Humac Balance portable computerized balance system, and SportsWare Online. CSMi. Better data leads to better results. Hey, all you rehab specialists out there. Do you have an Isokinetic dynamometer just sitting around your clinic not being used? Little known fact, Isokinetic machines that aren't used regularly are at higher risk for bouts of sadness. Help your machine out and take CSMi's newest CEU course, Isokinetics 101 Online, created by me, Daniel Bodkin, and learn how to use all of the exercise and testing applications available on your machine. With new and exciting rehab techniques in your toolbox, your sad Isokinetic machine can become an active member of the rehab team again and regain its happiness. Isokinetics 101 Online by CSMi has been approved for 8 credit hours for athletic trainers, physical therapists, and physical therapy assistants. Contact your state board for details on specific requirements. This course is available at humacnorm.com/courses/isokinetics-101.
Hello, and welcome to the Everything PT podcast with Matt Taylor and Daniel Bodkin. Please do not consider anything you hear to be medical advice, just a couple of guys ranting about everything PT. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Everything PT podcast. I'm Daniel Bodkin. I'm with my co-host, Matthew Taylor. What's going on, Matt?
Not much, Dan. A little late night edition to the podcast, but I'm well, man. Just busy with private practice over here, but life is good.
Yeah. Right before we hopped on tonight, I was getting caught up on Love is Blind season 3. So
my wife is driving me insane with that. I mean, did yours rope yours into that as well?
No. So, I mean, the first season came out right at the start of the pandemic. So what else were you going to do? But I feel like those people were a little bit more authentic. They were on the show for the right reason. And now it's 3 seasons in. A lot of the people are kind of young. It's like, you don't need to be on the show. And so, it is what it is. But hey, we got a really cool guest tonight.
Yeah. I am super excited about our guest. I know we both have really good relationships with him. So
So
pretty excited.
Welcome, Rob Potash of CSMi.
Hey, Matt, Daniel, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I got to give definitely. My TV bit. I'm excited Yellowstone's coming back.
Yeah.
Sunday.
Drops on Sunday.
I know. Sunday. 2-hour premiere, right?
It's going to be awesome. Better be awesome because the expectations are high. But that's our house.
Yeah. 2 of my clients dressed up as the main characters. I don't know who they are, but that was their Halloween costume this year.
Oh, really?
That'd be a better show to get into, Daniel. Yellowstone rather than Love is Blind.
Don't judge. All right, so we're here with Rob of CSMi, and if you didn't hear the commercial, you may probably skip through it. CSMi is one of our sponsors, right? So we've been asking Rob to hop on, and even more disclosure, I actually do a lot of work with CSMi, actually throughout my whole career. But now I kind of do, I install machines, but I'm also the creator of some of their educational content. So, just make sure, you're aware of that as we go into it. But so Rob, why don't you tell us a little bit about CSMi?
So CSMi was started back in 1982, but you know what? I'm going to dial the clock back a little bit. Can I give you guys a little history on Isokinetics? Because without Isokinetics, there'd be no CSMi. So, okay. So it's the late 60s, and there's a guy named James Perrin, and he is a biomechanist, not a formal one, an informal one. So he doesn't have the degrees, but he's got the smarts. And he was trying to find a way to measure muscle capacity. And he came across isometrics, which gives you strength at one point in the range. He came across isotonics, which gives you strength to the weakest point in the range. But really what he wanted to do was measure maximum muscle capacity throughout the entire range. And he came up with the idea of, hey, if I hold the speed constant, the muscle, once it reaches the speed, is working at maximum effort all the way through the range. So he does that and realizes, well, now I can measure that by measuring torque and create a curve. So now I've got force. Then he said, if I map force over top of position, I measure range of motion. I know where in the range the strength is or where in the range the weakness is. So he creates this thing called the cybernetic dynamometer. Fast forward, his company doesn't want anything to do with it. So there's a company called Humac in Long Island, and they say, hey, we want that. And at the time they were making canes and walkers and things like that. If you go into the drugstore, you'll see their product. So they buy it and they take cybernetic, turn it into Cybex, and create a division, Cybex division of Humac. So Cybex runs with their Cybex dynamometer, which has a dual channel chart recorder measuring torque and position. And then around 1979, they realized it takes a long time to take a strip of paper with two lines on it to get to the numbers, to get to the peak torque, to get to the work, to get to the range of motion. So you could do your test in about 15 minutes, but then the physical therapist would spend about an hour taking that strip chart with a little white card and coming up with the deficits. And then if you wanted to do a progress report, it took even longer. So Cybex set up a couple teams, one internal, and they set one up, an external development team, which involved my brother, who was a student at MIT at the time, Massachusetts General Hospital, and two really good physical therapists, Mary Watkins and Betty Ann Harris, and then also an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Zarens, and I think Dr. Zarens is finally retired. Anyway, so they spent a year working with Rich. They had a Cybex machine, and he took a big box, and what it would do is it would read in the signals, and then it would produce a report. So the advantage would be, instead of spending 15 minutes plus an hour, you'd spend 15 minutes plus 5 minutes. So at the end of the experiment for Cybex, they decided, we don't want what you did, we'll do something internal, and they took an internal solution. And then my dad at the time, who was an entrepreneur, suggested to Rich he start a company to sell this computer upgrade for the Cybex 2 that would replace the chart recorder. So this computer upgrade ran on an Apple IIe computer with 2 floppy disk drives and had a green monochrome screen, and there was no such thing as a mouse.
Floppy disk.
Yeah, exactly. 2 of them, 5 1/4. Anyway, so for 20 years, we kind of ran around looking for people with Cybex machines, where Cybex would say, hey, you need a new machine. We would say, hey, no, you don't. You need a new computer. And that's what we did for 20 years. And then the Isokinetic industry, just to finish that line of thought for Cybex, around 1997, Cybex decided to merge with a fitness company called Trotter. And when they merged with Trotter, Trotter became Cybex International and decided they want nothing to do with medical. So they threw off what we call the Cybex norm. They had a Fitron bike, a UBE, and a Kinetron. And they sold it to a company down in Texas called Henley Healthcare. If you've ever seen this machine that stands by itself, it has corn cob inside. It's like a heated machine. It was called Flutotherapy. Mm-hmm. That was one of their products. So they ran with it for a few years, and then they sold it to a company called Zenetics. So Zenetics was interesting. Their idea was, we're going to start a medical system, but what's going to be unique is we're going to make all of our own equipment. Okay, which is not really plausible. But it was a good story because they raised about $93 million without ever registering with the SEC. SEC catches wind and shuts them down the next day. SEC sells off the assets, and that's where we got into a bidding contest with our friends from New York. And we ended up buying Cybex, and then overnight in 2003 went from selling a little interface and a floppy disk to making Isokinetic machines. And we've done that ever since. We've shipped over 1,000 of them. The company's in 30 something different countries, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's better than ever and bigger than ever. So all good so far.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned overseas. I mean, before we pushed record, you were just telling us a laundry list of where you've been and where you have coming up. So CSMi is huge in that worldwide market.
Well, that's the fun part of being in your own business. and working with your brother, you kind of get to pick and choose what you want. But what's really nice about the physical therapy industry is it's a big business, but it's a small business, right? And if you can find your niche within that, big business, and our niche is isokinetic machines, you just get to meet everybody. You get to go everywhere. When people hear, where were you 4 weeks ago? I was in Croatia. Where are you going? I'm going to Slovakia in 2 weeks. How big is your company? 15 people. It's just like, but that's why you get to do it, but it's all fun. If it wasn't fun, we wouldn't be doing it. So yeah, it works.
Yeah. And I kind of came on in 2009. I was an athletic training student with John, and you had a machine there, and he and Dwayne, they used it a little bit, but they were really, they loved what they knew, and that was the Kincom. So when I came on, they said, hey, we really want you to learn this machine. So I started saying, all right, well, what are some of the different things it can do, and what are some other things that it's capable of, and how do we apply that to rehab? And then you invited me to come to the Combine for the first year in 2012. And, I had no idea that they even did isokinetic testing at the NFL Combine. But that blew my mind being there the first time. And I did it from 2012 to 2018, I believe was my last year. But how did you even get started with the Combine?
So Cybex hooked up with the Combine probably, I saw old pictures of a Cybex too with Pepper Burns, he was the athletic trainer. I think he was with the Jets at the time, and then he ended with the Packers. Anyway, that being said, so Cybex did it, and then when Cybex was sold to Henley was kind of like, I'm not so sure we want to do this. And one of the guys that was working with Henley was an old Cybex guy named Conley Duncan, who paid for Bear Bryant at Alabama. Conley's a great guy. And he said, hey, Rob, we've got this thing called the Combine. They do the Cybex test. And what it is a 2-speed knee test, 60, 240, 5, 15 reps. Because, we really need machines there. Can you do it? So, I asked my brother, hey, Rich, you want to do it? Do what? The Combine. What's the Combine? Well, I don't know, but Conley said it's a good thing to do. So we got 3 machines. We put them in the U-Haul and drove out. And I think we did that for 20 years up until COVID came around. But it's a lot of fun. It's really cool to see the different athletes, and it's kind of interesting. They lock out the press, they lock out the fans. They lock down Indianapolis, right? You're there. You have to have your pass. If you don't have your pass, you don't get in. They're really good about that. But you can see the kids that are special. They just have like an aura about them. And it's fun when you get a Florida kid and a Georgia kid or Alabama kid on the machine, and another one from the other school, and they start talking smack back and forth. It's just fun,
Yeah, we would knock out 385 tests in I think 5 days.
So they invite, you're close. They invite 325 kids a year. And it's an interesting thing to be a part of, because here you go, think about it, right? Say you're a kid that's on the line, like, you wanted to get invited. Everybody wants to get invited. You get invited. Well, every kid there has an agent, right? And every agent is giving this kid advice on something that he's never really seen before. So part of one of the questions is, do you even want to do the Cybex test, right? Well, because you're going to have to run the 43 days later. What's going to happen? So, there was always a little bit of, and most of the kids did it, but we always had like, I don't know, a few percentage of the kids who are just like, well, my agent said, don't do it. And, you feel for the kids, because everybody wants to get to the next level, right? And they want to get there as wisely as possible. And they're listening to the agent that they hired, who's going to, if he gets a contract, negotiate the contract. And then you've got this other group, which is us, right? And then the athletic trainers in the room going, you really ought to do this test. Yeah. So, there's
team
a lot.
Docs.
Yeah. And the docs are there too, saying, I want to know. But one time I was there, and the kids, I don't know, somehow the agent's gotten all the kids' heads. So there was a lot of people coming up saying, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. And it wasn't just our stuff, it was other stuff. They have to do a bench press 225, how much? And it was Bill Parcells, I'll never forget. So there was the Cybex room in the Holiday Inn, and across the hall was where the athletes would go for their meals. And Parcell gets up before dinner and he goes, all right, you guys, you listening? And it's like dead quiet. And he goes, if you don't do what I want you to do here, you don't have to worry about doing what I want you to do on my team, because you'll never get there. Next day, everybody wanted to get tested. It was pretty neat to see the power of a coach like that.
All right, so Rob, Isokinetics is huge in the 80s and the 90s, but then the Medicare laws changed in the US. Started, finding ways to be more fiscally, manageable. Do I buy a new machine, or do I have them do closed kinetic chain, which, all I have to do is pay for maybe some weights, right? So it started to die away. Now, luckily, this is when I kind of came on in the, 2010s or late 2009s, and it was right before the big resurgence. But you've had a huge resurgence in isokinetics lately. What do you think is attributing to that?
Well, your work really, and research. So just to dial it back a little bit, prior to 1992, if somebody sat on one of our machines, the clinic would have modality-based billing, which means here's $100 or $150. So it's real easy to decide, should I buy at that time a $30,000 machine? Well, how many new patients do you get a week? 10. Okay, so that's $1,000 or $1,500 in the first week, right? And you got 4 weeks in a month, right? Okay, that's $4,000. Now you've paid for more than 10% in the first month of the machine. It's really easy to buy. And then when healthcare reform came along, modality-based billing, most of it went away, and it was time-based, so it's really hard to afford these machines. So the market went from mostly rehab and research to research and not so much rehab, because it was just hard to justify the machine. The clinicians, hospitals, private clinics, all had to reinvent their business, right? Any revenue-based business had to rethink, how can I buy capital equipment if I'm being paid for my time? And we sold a tool that made you more efficient. So you actually lost money if you bought our upgrade at the time. You wanted to be slower, not faster. But that's where, closed kinetic chain, plyometrics, a lot more, different ways to test came in, and it's all good. There's no one size fits all solution. But I think around 2014, we started to see more research on the value of the value of isolated joint testing. Hey, you know what, it is maybe a good idea to know the maximum muscle capacity through the range. And then when you look at the most efficient way to strengthen a muscle, you're probably sick of me hearing this, or sick of me saying it. But, in my mind, there is no more efficient way to build a muscle than using isokinetics. So I think part of it is people came back to, you know what, we need to measure deficits before we send people back to work, back to the game, or just back into activities of daily life. I think part of it is they've realized, back in the day, you'd walk in a PT clinic, there'd be 20 pieces of selectorized weight stack machines, right? That's not there anymore. So, my isokinetic machine can do knee, shoulder, elbow, wrist, so I can use that for strengthening. And the other component, and this is where I would have to probably tip my hat to the folks from Chattanooga, KingCom, who bought the eccentric or the active component into isometrics. And the guys like John Hisamoto, who did a lot of education for KingCom, and then you following in John's shoes with the education is, it's a motor. So if it's a motor, it can do whatever you need it to do. So when I was in Croatia 4 weeks ago, we had probably 13 clinics together. And 3 of the clinics, we were just chatting at the end of the night. And, who do you use your machine with? Well, us, mostly MS patients, stroke patients, amputees. And I'm like, really? How do you do that? And they go, well, we just put it in CPM. And we just tell them to relax, and we let it move them back and forth. And then we tell them to resist how they can resist. We look if they're doing a concentric contraction or an eccentric contraction. We kind of take a baseline of what they can do and note it. And then the next time they come in, we know what they can do. So we say, hey, we know you can do this, so do it better. Right. So that's really cool. Right. And I think with the education that you're doing, more people realize there are a lot of things you can do with a device that can move a patient or let the patient move it and measure it. And there'd probably be no isokinetics if back in the 70s, Cybex said we need clinical education. They had 8 physical therapists on staff.
Whew.
Yeah, teaching everybody, right? And they'd have user meetings with 500 people. I mean,
Wow.
they did a fantastic job on user education. So we're really just trying to mimic what they did in regards to education, and with the luck of the internet and your skills and other people and people like Matt that are willing to listen. It's really inexpensive to get the knowledge out there, and once it's sitting on the web, it's there. We actually dropped the unit into Mayo Clinic down in Arizona the other day, and what the manager did, which was brilliant, was he had everybody watch the CEU course that you created. So I'm doing my in-service and everybody's like, yeah. And then I go, okay, well, let me show you something you don't know. I'm going to show you how to do an isolated stroke test. And they said, oh, we know how to do that. I'm like, you do? How'd you learn that? They go, well, we watched the CEU course. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, another thing too, yeah, we have the course, and I have a little commercial for during this, but you also have free content on there. We did a webinar series a few years ago. You have that available on your website for free. We have I basically took our course, condensed it down, because I realized what we learn in school about isokinetics, or what you read from the chapter, is very different than what it can actually be done with it now. So I was like, how are we going to get the educators to teach the next generation? It's like, here, just give them a presentation. So that's available on your website, free. I think it's 90 minutes. You watch it. It's science. It's demonstration of exercise and testing. So it's like, you have a lot of good resources out there.
Yeah,
I just want to jump in real quick. I will say I've seen a lot of them. Not all of them, but they're very good. And for someone who has bought a machine, guys do a great job of educating people on the machine and having those resources. And Daniel, I've reached out to you to how to make a protocol early on, and you had sent me a video, and boom, I can quickly do that. So,
well, hey, Matt, that's a good pivot
you.
right there. Let's talk about that. So you are a private practice owner. Your budget is, it's everything. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts when, buying a machine, and, how does that even play into your daily treatment pattern?
Oh gosh, we pretty much center our clinic a lot around the machine, and it plays a huge role. And the machine is a large upfront cost, obviously, but like Rob mentioned earlier, you break it down into how can I afford this machine into a monthly budget. There's some things come to the top of my mind, like IPCS testing, reimburse very, very well if you're in a heavily populated area. There's some easy ways that you can train a PT tech even to do those things too. Return to play testing. We get knocks on our doors all the time to, hey, I play for a local college and university. Can I get a test? My doctor said I need this. Then we realize their test is no good. And then they actually need therapy too. So we get to see them for therapy most of the time. And so we get to see, before we had this machine, we saw 0 ACL patients, and now we're up to 8 in this calendar year. And that number is growing, by the week too. We're getting more and more popular because it brings opportunity for you and your niche and your market too. So it's been great for us.
But that's hats off to you, Matt, because, I always tell people it's easy to buy equipment, right? And that's the easy, fun, emotional part. I got a machine. That's really cool. Yeah. Okay. What are you going to do with it? Right. And it takes somebody like you that says, okay, I have a machine. Now I've got to let my doctors know I have a machine. Now I got to let my doctors know why they want me to work with their patients with this machine, and really develop the market. So, again, congratulations for doing the heavy lifting, and establishing the market and growing your business, and that's how you do it as an entrepreneur. You got to just find something that works and work it. So good job.
Thanks. Hey, real quick, funny story that you guys would appreciate. I had a chance to go use the Humac norm at Marshall University, and I had never been on one. So I gave myself about an hour to just learn the machine. And it was, Dan used the analogy, it's like having Tiger Woods' clubs, but they're no good if you don't know how to use them. And that's what it was like. But I did figure it out. We did get the test done, but it was with all the bells and whistles and everything I thought it would be. It was sweet.
Well, it's kind of funny when Rich and I bought Cyvex, and we bought the Norman, we bought it in our space. I'll never forget the two of us. It was late one night. We finally put it together. and we looked and we said, you know what, we're going to make all the changes to this thing. We're going to really do it right. And we made some changes here or there, and it took us about, I don't know, 2 months to realize none of the changes ever got out the door. It didn't need any of our input. I mean, the guy is the Cybex is, yeah, it's their 5th generation machine. They built it for the most elite, strongest people that are out there. It literally, it's rare that it breaks. I mean, mechanically it doesn't break. It's the electronics, it's the heel, the Achilles heel. But yeah, it's good.
Oh yeah, and the software is what really sold me. I worked on a few different machines as a student, or working as a PT, and it's the one. I love the machine itself, but the software is fantastic. Rob, CSMi also has another big product out there for our athletic trainers, the SportsWare Online.
Yeah. SportsWare is great.
It's funny. I was an athletic training student at USF, and everybody's like, "Oh, make sure you put it into SportsWare." And I'm like, I was like, "All right, that's what we use." And then come to find out, a few years later, it's like, "Oh, they also make SportsWare." Like that's huge.
Yeah. So we started hanging out at the NATA show in 1982, selling the Humac upgrade for the Cybex, and it was an Apple IIe, as I said. Then it became an IBM PC, still 2 floppy drives. But after like 9 years of athletic trainers going, "Hey, is this an injury tracking program?" We'd say no. We finally said, "Yeah, sure. What's an injury tracking program?" So yeah, in 1991 we came out with SportsWare, which is at the time was a PC based program for athletic trainers to record athlete demographics, injuries, and treatments. And then in, I don't know, I'm guessing 2000. I don't know, I'll just pick a number and say 7 or 8. We flipped it over to the web, and it was kind of interesting because at the time we had calculated that SportsWare was probably on 20,000 desktop computers, right? So at that time, CSMi had, I don't know, 4 people. So 20,000 customers and 4 people. It's kind of interesting. When we did an update, you'd have to mail them the disk, and then everybody loads it, and then they start getting the phone calls like, "Hey, my first 2 computers work, my 3rd one doesn't. What's going on?" So that was kind of rough. Thankfully, the internet came, so there's really 1 copy of SportsWare now that's compatible with 2 browsers, right? Microsoft and Apple. And the interesting part of that story is we thought the IT people would hate it. We want to control everything. They loved it. They couldn't push their customers to the internet fast enough. They're like, "Oh wait, you're going to be responsible for the computers? All yours, guys. Check the box. Put a web-based system in." So yeah, SportsWare's, since 1991, it's been the top selling injury tracking program in high schools and colleges. And yeah, it's a super fun to work with. Love working with the athletic trainers. They're just a cool group that I don't think realizes how hard they work, because they work really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, SportsWare is cool. If you need it, yeah. If you have an outreach program, or you're an athletic trainer in a high school or college, and you're not happy with what you're using, or you're using paper, give us a jingle.
Yeah. I get real excited anytime I get to go install a machine in an athletic training room. That's always going to be a fun day.
I was in Green Bay on Monday installing a machine, moving a machine actually for Bell and Health. They're doing a deal with Concentra. It's occupational med, and they're actually, IPCS is Industrial Physical Capacity Services. And what they do is they have contracts with businesses for return to work and placing somebody in a position. So after they have a job, can they do the physical lifting for this job? But Concentra handles 1 in every 5 occupational therapy patient. That organization. That's huge. I was like, when I heard that number, I couldn't believe it. But the cool part was they're building out this clinic. It's not done yet, but the physical therapist, this woman, Michelle, you could just tell that when that clinic opens up and the light goes on, the energy is going to be through the roof, which is really pretty cool. Wow. Anyway, side note, I digress. Back to the podcast.
Rob, I got one last thing for you. Yep. How are we looking for CrossFit games this year?
Dude, yeah.
So if you don't know, Rob competes, and he performs well too.
Well, luckily they have age-based categories, right? It's a tough one for me, because actually I roll over. The odometer hits 60 in June, so it's a new age group. So now's my chance to shine, right? Because I'm with all the older guys, relative. I don't know. I just got some new skis. The ski season's coming up, and my 2 girls have Icon passes, and which means you can ski unlimited at the ski places. So, and the games always start in March, which is ski season. But I don't know. You know, here I can tell you, I've been sitting on my Fitron and my UB on a regular basis. So I'll give it all I got. I'll let you know. Yeah, I'll get through a round. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Daniel, it's funny. I go over my emails and texts in the morning, and then like in the evening, and then I texted Rob at like 5:20 in the morning, and Rob responds just like that. And I was like, "What are you doing awake right now?" He's like, "I'm ready to smash a workout right now." So like, crazy, Rob.
Oh, that was an ugly workout. That was a Concept 2 workout. I got a friend who's a little twisted in the head, and he's always making us do the row series. And that workout was, oh man, it was 5 2,000-meter rows with a 2-minute break in between. And there's just, and
Sounds
your
awful.
score is your slowest time and your total time, total mind. Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's just, yeah, I was glad you interrupted me because I needed a distraction. Anyway, it's all fun.
Well, everybody check out, was it humacnorm.com for the Humac Norm, and sportswear is what? SWOL, SportsWare Online.
Yeah, if you just do sportsweareonline.com, that'll get you there. But if you go to the Humac Norm and you click on resources, that's where you'll find the content that Daniel created. And we're going to be putting up some more content there too, to help people use the device a little better with their patients.
Yeah, absolutely. And, check out CSMi. They got some great products. And Matt, you got anything else?
No, as one of the beneficiaries of, a CSMi product, I'll say it's great. I'm very happy with it. Our business is better off. If you do sports, you almost need it. It's the way that objective testing is going, and in the future with research and, what else with insurance companies, reimbursement. Do they want to see those objective numbers? So it's been really good. So thank you, Rob and Daniel, for supporting it. I know I've annoyed you guys multiple times with questions about it, but yeah.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Rob.
Matt, really appreciate you being a customer, and I'm glad you're helping your people down in West Virginia. And I got a feeling I'm going to see you soon. So
yeah,
we'll
I think so. We're looking hopefully a second clinic in the next year or two, and I'd love to get another machine from you, hopefully. So
all right, guys, have a great night. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep,
bye, guys.
Cheers,
Thanks. Bye. Looking for a way to improve sport-specific training with your athletes? Then you have to check out BlazePods. BlazePods is a neurocognitive reaction training intervention that can be incorporated into your sessions for patients throughout the treatment spectrum. Visit blazepod.com, enter code EverythingPT at checkout, and save 15% off your order today.
The Everything PT podcast is sponsored by Vald Performance. Vald is the creator of the airbands for blood flow restriction therapy. If you are looking to stay up to date with today's post-surgical modalities and adding VFR to your clinic, please visit valdperformance.com.